Hey there, it's Sam, and I don't believe in astrology. I know that's a kind of weird thing to hear me say because I'm an astrologer, but what I'm saying is I don't believe in astrology, and neither should you. Astrology is not a belief, it's a science, it's a spiritual science. It's actually the science of sacred astronomy, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. As I said, astrology is not a belief any more than yoga is a belief. If someone says, I don't believe in yoga, we would say, well, so what? You're not supposed to believe in yoga, you're supposed to do yoga, just like astrology. But we hear people all the time say, I don't believe in astrology, and it just kind of rolls off us. But it's because they're approaching it incorrectly. Astrology is not something to believe in, it's something to practice. I don't believe in it, and I don't recommend anyone believe in it. In fact, I thought astrology was nonsense when I first started looking into it. But of course, the more I looked into it, the more I realized that it's accurate, that it works, just like science works. And that's the point. Science works. It's not about belief, and we need to balance belief with method, belief with science, in order to have our beliefs even make sense to us. When we say that we just believe in something, but we don't understand how the thing we believe in actually works, it's also a big problem. So astrology is where we can harmonize what we believe in with how those beliefs actually work. So how is astrology sacred astronomy? Well, here's how. The universe that we live in is it's said to be about 13 billion years old. Our solar system is said to be 4.5 billion years old. The sun, moon, all the planets have been around 4.5 billion years, and through that time, the planets have worked into that sacred vibration that eventually began to produce form. Now, 4.5 billion years is a long time. It's hard to really visualize what that means. This book has about 450 pages in it. If you were to take 100 of these books and stack them one on top of the other, it would probably be about 10 to 12 feet. If you were to take the last page in that stack of books, that would be the relative length of humanoids on Earth. That would be about the last 100,000 years relative to 4.5 billion years, which is the age of the solar system. So it's really important to understand the scale of time. We have only been in human form for about 100,000 to 200,000 years, yet the solar system that we live in has been around 4.5 billion years. As I said, it's like that last page in the stack of 10 feet of books. Now that's for the last 100,000 years. Of course, what about the last couple thousand years? That would be maybe the last word on the last page of the book. So the universe as we know it, and our solar system, this area that we inhabit, is incredibly old, incredibly wise. We can see that wisdom built into the genius of our body, and this patient cosmic unfolding that has produced life is built into every cell of our body. This is why we're so resilient to disease and whatnot, because our body has the wisdom of 4.5 billion years worked into it. Now, it's only been for that last 100,000 years that the sun and moon have worked into the same sacred vibrational frequency with the Earth, the vibrational frequency of 108. It's the reason why the sun and the moon both look to be the same size to us from Earth. You can fit 108 moons between us and the moon, and 108 suns between us and the sun. So this ratio of scale and distance has only been set up that way for about the last 100,000 years or so, and this is why life has reached that very sophisticated level that we understand it now, sophisticated in the sense of human beings which can understand and which have consciousness. That has been a product of 4.5 billion years, and it's only been this last 100,000 years that we have such a sophisticated organism that there's actually even thought and higher consciousness. So as I said, during that time, that 4.5 billion years though, the planets have been moving, carving out their sacred vibrational patterns in space, not just in space, but in our body. Our body is tuned to these vibrational patterns from the planets themselves. So you might ask, how does the energy of the planets in this abstract kind of way, how does that take form? Well, you know, last week we talked about the planets as energizing the chakras in our astral body, as Sri Yukteswar had talked about, and as Yogananda talked about that our karmas arise at a certain time, and Amachi talks about karma only penetrates to the level of sankalpa. Yukteswar talked about the astrology chart as the portrait of the chakras, the inner and the outer landscape. But how does it work? Well, here's how it works. So basically what happens is the planets rule and produce different effects. First of all, they produce their effects through what are called the elements. So we've all heard of the 5 elements: water, earth, fire, air, and space. And those elements then form what are called tissues, or dhatus in Ayurveda. That's bone, blood, nerve, plasma, fat, semen, and muscle. These things arrange themselves into forms through what are called the 3 gunas, the 3 qualities of life, the 3 ropes of Maya, the 3 ropes of form, which is tamas, emotion or feeling, which is rajas, and spirit or intelligence and wisdom, which are the 3 gunas. So once we understand these simple yet powerful frameworks, we see how life forms are created through spirit. Form is a creation of spirit and has a manifest quality of feeling to it as well. So when you understand astrology correctly, you can see how the same planet that created the form also created the feeling that you have about that form, and also the highest spiritual lesson that you can learn through that form. So you can see how your child is a certain way, how that child makes you feel a certain way, and what the ultimate spiritual goal is for that child. Now this comes from the planets, but the planets aren't the only thing that we're looking at when we're looking at astrology. The planets also rule signs. They have that masculine and feminine quality, like I talked about last week when I talked about the chakras, and the inner chakra landscape is related to the astrology signs. Those signs are ruled by planets. But then the forms that are produced are also ruled by the planets through the astrology houses. So for instance, if someone is born when Leo is rising, at that moment when Leo is rising, then Virgo will be the 2nd house. So Mercury, which rules Virgo, will produce things that have to do with the 2nd house. Things like speech and flexibility. So a person would see how their speech and communication and their approach to money would lead to higher spiritual awakening, and how they would feel about it with the Leo person, because Mercury rules the 2nd and 11th house. So once you understand it properly, you see that the planets are these ancient divine beings, but they're not just these abstract principles. Their energy is related to an element, it's related to a force, it's related to an actual tissue in the body. It operates through this evolutionary process of body, mind, and spirit. Then it comes down and has a feeling, an emotion, and then it produces a result. It's a whole subtle, beautiful, energetic dynamic. This is how astrology works, to show us the forms of our karma, what those karmas mean, when they're going to arise, what we're likely to do, how to orient our energy toward the highest good that we're all trying to aspire toward. Of course, these are the things that I talk about in my book. It's going to be starting with this very, big, broad concept of how astrology works, what it really is, then how this energy filters down from the most cosmic to the emotional to the physical, and then how to, get the most out of our time and life here on Earth, so that we're always evolving toward our highest self. So of course, for beginners, they'll really get a great introduction to how astrology works, what it really is. It's not a bunch of beliefs. I'm not going to assume that everybody should just believe it. You're going to see why it works at the very beginning, and then I'm going to take you from that place of seeing how it works and why it works, like I just explained, all the way down to being able to look at your chart and understand literally how astrology works. There are a bunch of templates in the book, literally like chart reading templates. I've been giving these to my students for years, so you'll be able to form very strong and powerful sentences about your chart right away just by getting the book, and you'll start to see how these patterns work. The book project so far has been very successful, and I still need your help. I'm trying to raise as much as I can. I set the project at the minimum level that would help me, but I could raise 2 or 3 times that and it would still be very helpful. At this point, it's just a matter of pre-ordering the book. So if you think that you're going to want to get the book, just pay for it now, and it helps me make the book as best as it can be. And the other thing that I wanted to mention for those who are interested in a higher level of contribution, I have great bonuses. So please make sure to look at the bonuses that are being offered. You can get readings, you can get courses, you can get a sneak peek look into the book before it's finished, you can get listed in the book as either a sponsor or as a patron. So if this was helpful for you, please, post it on your Facebook or let some friends know.